I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill 5954, which is effectively trying to or calling for a continued suspension of the experience rating for unemployment compensation benefits that are imposed on employers. As you all probably know, the experience rating is increased when employers have to lay off employees. This proposal, I recognize, is a bit of a Band-Aid on the situation that we're facing right now. And I just want to talk a little bit about the broader issues. Right now, as we've seen with this pandemic, many employers had to shut down by no fault of their own, but rather because of the pandemic and trying to mitigate the spread of the virus. And as a result, they are having to pay, into the Unemployment Compensation Fund, which is now being propped up with federal dollars and is bankrupt. The governor suspended the experience rating to help employers, but I think we have a long-term issue here as the plan needs to recover. Suspending these experience ratings are helpful, but on the back end, we're also going to have surcharges imposed on the employers to try to prop this fund back up. And I think we have a broad issue here of trying to make that fund solvent again as we recover, because I do think there is a direct correlation in jobs being created after this pandemic is over and businesses trying to absorb the cost of the Unemployment Compensation Fund. So I think at least short term, this type of proposal will help businesses as they try to recreate the jobs that they have lost, to let them do that, and then somehow, slowly turn the spigot back on for the surcharges that businesses are naturally going to see when we try to revitalize this Unemployment Compensation Fund. And I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Representative Candelora. And I don't know that we've ever met personally, but I want to thank you for putting this bill forward. And I do think that we have a great opportunity to move forward on this session, because it has very broad and bipartisan support.
In preparing for this hearing, I did read some issues with insolvency in 2009, 2010, where he had to borrow from the federal government. Do you have any lessons learned from that time period that we can apply now?
Well, I think one of the concerns in 2009, obviously that was a bubble that we saw that sort of impacted certain segments of our society. And I think we didn't see a suspension of the experience rating, obviously, because certain industries, were culpable in causing the drop in employment. So it was different, and I understand we handled it differently. The state still had to borrow federal money from the government. What we didn't do there, which I was a little bit critical of, but it's a catch-22, is when the federal money has to be repaid, there's interest that needs to be paid on that money. And should the state try to forbear on that interest, again, to help the businesses recover? And so I think that's something that we should be examining this cycle. I know the interest has been delayed at the federal level for us to have to repay. And I think that we should be looking at delaying it again. And I think my point overall for us to learn is that businesses replenish this fund, and there is a correlation between our job recovery and the businesses being able to pay this all back. And so I think to the extent that the state of Connecticut could try to mitigate and spread those costs out a little bit longer could be helpful to our businesses, because the surcharges that are imposed on companies, there is a cap. So larger businesses aren't impacted as severely because the exposure is capped, but our small businesses never have that liability that hits the cap. So proportionately, sometimes they're paying a lot more money proportionately to them, and that could impact the job creation. And so I just think we need to be mindful of that, I think, as we move forward, to try to figure out what the right balance tipping point is for the companies.
Could you also tell us a little bit about how the experience rating is going to really impact those who are hurt in the pandemic, especially restaurants and small businesses disproportionately, and if there are any steps in terms of layering on the experience rating or suspending the experience rating that may be adopted, or any further thoughts on that?
Well, I think the experience rating, capping it at, or suspending the increases, is critical in the short term. Again, because as employers are going to be hiring back, it's a cost that they don't have to incur in their wages, and so that they could hopefully more quickly bring back their employees. I know the rate overall is capped at the 6.8% overall. And so this suspension, I think in the short term, it would be critical. And then obviously long term, I think we need to look to, God willing, we have a quick recovery, and we don't see any surge come back. We may not have to address the issue beyond the four corners of this bill. And so I think short term, this is an important measure to take. And then maybe long term, if we need to address the collateral issues, we should be in a position to do that.